is Vikki, and I am in recovery I started in recovery 4 years ago for codependency. Now I would call it chaos creating. And you're welcome to reach out to me if you want to know more about that. Today, I'm actually going to talk about working with others. I was around recovery for a very long time and but wasn't really actually working on a program of my own. And I hit really a sort of like a crisis moment, maybe just a really tough spot in my life. I wasn't doing very well, and I had somebody in my life who was extremely um, mm, assertive, also maybe a little bit anyway, pushed me really back into recovery. And I'm grateful now that happened. I'm grateful to be back in these rooms, working a program and working with others. I've seen over the years, 20 years ago, probably was when I first stepped into recovery rooms. I initially started at Al-Anon. I did Al-Anon. I did Nar-Anon, which is for the families of alcoholics, and really settled into this understanding of like, oh wow, I'm codependent. Learned a lot about codependency, and but in this recent time, what I've really seen is that it's imperative to work with others. It's really imperative, and in this meeting we like to talk about the Bible, which we refer to as the good book. And we also talk about the big book, which is the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Some people might refer to other programs too. We're totally open to that. But for me, the moment I heard the things in the big book, and I already was familiar with the Bible, but when I heard the stuff out of the big book, I was like, all of this makes sense. Oh my goodness, it's like a recipe. The Bible was this like big confusing book that I didn't really understand, and I didn't really know how to apply it to my life. And then these AA like 12 steps, I was just like, oh my goodness. So we now have a program called LifeLab, which is what I'm working in right now. It's similarly a 12-step based program. But I do some other things too, because I really have come to an understanding that in order to be in healthy relationships with others, which, I love having friends, I love having community, so different from when we were living a life of addiction and we were alone and we had no one. In order to keep this life, in order to maintain these relationships, I actually have to be of fit spiritual condition. And so I actually have a requirement, I have a responsibility to maintain and grow and enlarge my spiritual condition. And that I could point you to the big book to show you that. I could point you to the Bible to show you that. It's just so important. And the spiritual life can't just be like all this stuff in my brain. Same with recovery. It can't just be things in my brain that I regurgitate to you. I actually have to be living it. And so there's this concept towards the end of the 12 steps, and it comes out in the Bible, that we need to be available to others, that we need to give rather than get, and that I need to be a light to a dying world. And so how do I do that? How do I best serve others? And the concept that I want to promote to you today is attraction rather than promotion. And even though I'm going to promote it, okay, I worded that weird, but attraction rather than promotion is this concept that I want to talk about. And it's coming out of a group that I'm in, a meeting that I'm in. It's very small, and we meet with these two other couples on Wednesday mornings, very early, or much earlier than I was interested in being on Zoom. But we study this material, and the material is it comes out of Al-Anon, but it's really focusing on the traditions. Now, for anyone who's not super familiar with AA and Al-Anon and all those programs, they have the 12 steps, which is really about me and God. And then they have these 12 traditions, which is about me and the world around me. And so what we were studying this week, was about me and the world around me. And how do I best pass on this message? How do I best be of maximum service to others? And, um, you know, there's really, truly no way that I can do that through my own strength. Like, I just can't. I can try, but I'm going to get exhausted. I'm going to have burnout. I'm going to have calamity. I'm going to have difficult conversations with people that I'm not able to manage. I'm going to have emotional responses that are, you know, unexpected and regretful. I'll accumulate some resentments, and if I don't deal with them, they'll grow. The only way I can really truly work well with others and pass on this message is if I'm of fit spiritual condition and I'm doing it through the power of God and not the power of Vikki. Vikki is a terrible God, horrible. Um, and so initially, um, you know, so there's a saying that we know: do unto others as you would have them do for you. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Um, and in Al-Anon, we really learn, don't do for others what they need to do for themselves. And that would be true in my own life. I have experienced a very helpful person in my life who's very helpful. And I've really learned that I need to do for me what I can do for me. As much as it's joyous to have somebody else who's doing stuff for me, I have learned and grown so much by doing for myself, what I need to do for myself. And it's really the only way I'm going to grow. Um, by living and I just want to reiterate, this is coming from other material, and I can point you to that material if you're interested. But I'm really going to be really reading quite a bit of it, not word for word, but this is exactly where it came out of. So I could show it to you if you're interested. So really, by living my own life, and putting spiritual practices into action, doing the things that I've learned, and how I believe that the big book in the Bible has shown me to live my life, and LifeLab, by actually doing it, I am I'm going to draw the attention of others. Others are going to be interested. I've experienced this. They're going to be interested in my life and what I've been doing. It was a little bit disappointing to me that maybe some of the people that were like super closest to me weren't interested. And if I'm honest, I tried to convince them to be interested. Maybe there was a lot of energy that I spent in certain relationships, like really trying to convince, and maybe being a little bit too pushy, not in a good way, especially in the early years. Walking the walk is so much more effective than just talking the talk. And really, truly, that's what keeps me from being a hypocrite, right? If I'm actually doing what I say that I'm doing. I've given a talk like this in a room like this, on whatever topic, I forget what the topic was. And then when it was over, I was like, I should listen to that and just make sure that I'm doing what I said that I do. And and I did. It's hard to listen to myself, but I went back and listened to it. Am I actually doing what I say I'm doing? Am I actually doing what I'm teaching? I can't just teach a concept and not do it. It makes me a hypocrite. And we talked about that at our church on Sunday too. That was our sermon out of Acts. When we're new in recovery, and we're having this experience and it's very exciting, we want to tell other people about it. But if I'm mostly focused on like the outside and the other people, and I'm not really being intentional about my relationship with God and my walking out continuing to do the work, and am I making amends, and which is trying to right a wrong that I've caused, am I actually truly forgiving someone? Have I really truly forgiven someone, or is it still like, in the back of my head? Um, I'm not going to be an effective messenger if that's the case. Um, and so, I can spend a lot of time like suggesting that other people might need improvement, and maybe I'll get into these conversations. Hey, oh, there's this great thing, and I can find that sometimes I want it so much more for them than they want it for themselves, and that is it's not a great place to get into. The only person that I can actually fix or change and enact change is in myself. And that happened slowly. And so, why do I get into this headspace of like sometimes when I'm working with others or in relationship with others, of like pushing and really getting into these places that are just not helpful? Um, I can't give somebody else recovery. I can't actually like give them wisdom, serenity, or the desire to change. Um, you know, I can pray. It's really important to pray. And I can share the benefit of my own experience and what's happened for me. And even then, it's like really ideal that it's when asked, right? If it's not asked for, it's probably not a good time. And the rest is up to them and God. God is actually a really powerful God and a really amazing God and a much better God than I am. So what this um, this recognition of like seeing our own need to change drives a motivation to like, okay, what do I need to do next? How do I do this? And so when people come to me and that's where they're at, I'm like, great, that's amazing. Okay, um, here, let me point you in this direction. And here's something that, I'm doing that maybe could be helpful for you. And then I need to like leave it with them and see what happens. Sometimes I'll follow up like once or twice and just see. And then sometimes people just really want relationship. And what I've recognized is that I can actually set boundaries. And so boundaries is this like almost like this alarmist word that a lot of us don't understand. It took me a long time to understand, but it's like so simple. God set boundaries in the world. When he created it, he made a boundary between water and land. That's a boundary. This is water, this is land. He made a boundary between the sky and the earth, and darkness and light. Those are all boundaries. And so boundaries are a really good, helpful, useful thing. And sometimes, like my boundary, one of the things that I've learned is I don't have to listen to people vent on over and over. People will come back to me and they have this really difficult situation, and I'm like, great, let's pray about this. Like I'm not, I can't, I few times I might listen for quite a while, but I don't really have solutions for you. I'll ask questions, and then I have something to offer. Hey, do you want to try this, or do you want to? If they're asking, try that. And if they don't follow up, I actually really can't continue to listen to long venting sessions. That became a boundary for me. I don't have to tell the other person that. Um, I can just redirect conversations. Um, so that's one of the things that I realized and I put into place. The problem with, and so in some of my situation, there was an aspect of change that was really pushed towards me. I have a person in my life who's very knowledgeable in recovery, has been in recovery for a very long time, and has a lot of opinions, and that's the reason that I actually stepped foot back into the rooms. It worked. I did go back to the rooms, so this person's energy and hard sell, I guess you could call it, did work and got me back going to Codependence Anonymous, which then brought me into my next step where I did the steps and got me really diving deep into LifeLab in a new way. problem with that is that it breeds resentment. And the resentment wasn't the other person's problem. The resentment was my problem. The resentment was mine to deal with, not theirs to deal with. And this is a close relationship with someone that I trust, right? So I'm trying to give you kind of two different perspectives. I talked before about someone who's maybe a little bit of a different kind of relationship, and I'm trying to set boundaries with them. This is a different relationship. This is, my husband. It's day to day. I love him. I respect him. I care for him. I trust him. And yet, and I appreciated his care and concern for me when he was pushing me back into recovery. But it bred resentment, and that resentment was mine to deal with. And so when I'm looking at, this idea of what the Bible and the Big Book tell me of working with others, I'm going to encounter all kinds of different situations. And so, this is one example of, really, I would say, is someone trying to like work with me and help me get healthy. And then I developed a resentment, and I needed to deal with that. And I have, and I released it, and I'm very grateful. I'm really thankful. I suspect that, I don't have to suspect 100%, my husband and I, our situation was completely reversed 17 years ago. And I was the one that was like pushing him into recovery and made a ton of mistakes trying to get him to get help. It was something I wanted so badly. And, he had to work through his resentments towards me for a lot of the actions and behaviors that I took at that point in time. So the what I want to leave you with, and hopefully this has come out clear and is beneficial. So what I want to leave you with is that idea that working with others is super important to maintain my recovery, to maintain my own spiritual condition. It's truly how I grow. I can overdo it. I've made that mistake by caring more about what someone else is going through than they do. But I would say in the last couple of years, I've been in a really good place. Maybe I would be more hands off, but I have to use God's wisdom and discernment. And the only way that I get God's wisdom and discernment is by being in contact with God on a daily basis. And so I do sit with God in the morning and ask, what's my direction for today? Okay, what's on my schedule? Who's coming to mind? Who am I working with? Like, there's people that have specifically asked me to walk alongside them through this journey. So do any of them come to mind? Am I to check in with them? Am I just praying for them? And so I get my list in the morning. It's kind of my marching orders. But, then there's like really, truly, it's God's, so it stays with God. It's God's responsibility. It's not my responsibility. He's such a better God than I am. And so what I can do is, use discernment. So I'm asking for wisdom on a daily basis from God, and really try to keep a positive attitude, even when I think that like things aren't going the way that I think they should go when I'm working with someone. I want to keep a positive attitude. I'm, I'm not complaining in my head. I'm not disappointed in someone. I'm not discouraged in them. I'm encouraging, I'm really encouraging, and I'm prayerful with them. I'm praying with them, for them, but also with them, that they would have the strength to do what they need to do. And then, in my day-to-day life, this applies too, because my spiritual life pours over, and in my day-to-day life, I want to, same thing, be encouraging and not complaining, to show gratitude, be thankful, intentionally to be thankful, and really, newly just trying to be, just to be honest about my own need. and my own weaknesses, and so having those people, we have we have intentional people. I have intentional people in my life that I'm like going to be truly honest with, and those are different people than the ones who've like asked me to go through the steps with them, um, which again is a boundary. Um, then my relationships with the people who've asked me to help them do this work of recovery, it doesn't turn around and become me needing from them. And so we have some clear boundaries, and then they can focus on their relationship with God and what God is showing them. And truly, there's to be no expectation of reward or return. It's open-handed. Can I be open-handed in how I'm generous with the world around me? Can I be open-handed in how I'm giving in these relationships? Um, so, yeah, and I guess, really, it comes back to, for me, it comes back to like pride and humility. We have an early lesson in LifeLab about pride and humility, and sometimes I go back and read that list. Why am I doing what I'm doing? What's the purpose of what I'm doing? Who am I doing it for? God, would you show me, like, am I being prideful? Because in healthy relationships, you won't see pride. You'll see humble people. Humility is just such a key to having healthy relationships with others. When I have disunity, it's really important for me to check and see, like, where am I actually being prideful?